So today, guys, I wanted to talk a little bit about 5 options of tanks that the Korean tech tree, the United Korean tech tree, can actually have. Some very interesting ones. I'm not gonna get into every single thing. I might do a complete video later, right? But I just wanted to actually do a list of 5 vehicles that you should expect on that tech tree, okay? So let's get going. We start off with a Russian vehicle that wasn't used, it isn't used, by the North Koreans. Yes, there is a Russian tank that the South Koreans use, and I'm pretty sure it will be added. We even have its actual skin in the game, which is the T-80U. Yes, the South Koreans actually got T-80Us. They actually, the Russians actually did kind of a payment from Russia to Korea with T-80Us, right, and some other vehicles and some other things. But yeah, the T-80U is actually used by the South Korean military. Nowadays, they use these tanks more apparently as a kind of training tank on the regards of being the Red 4 tank, right, on a training ground. But let's be honest, if a war broke out, it would probably be used in combat as well, right? But it is like a similar, I mean, the same T-80U that we already know and love with K5s and everything, right? But yeah, for the South Koreans, which is crazy to think about, that the South Koreans have one of the most advanced Russian or Soviet tanks, especially when they got, this payment with the 80s, right? So it's kind of nuts that we have this this tank in the South Korean, part of the tech tree, I would say. And talking about the South Koreans, I need to talk about their main MBT, the K1 first, right? With the ability of using initial models of the 105mm and later down the line the 120mm, it becomes a very similar tank to the Abrams for the US. So the K1 is basically the Korean Abrams. It's kind of offensive even to say this because it's their own design, but you get the point, right? It is kind of used in the same way, but with some Korean kind of domestic line of thinking behind it, right? So, for example, it uses an MTU engine instead of the jet engine, right? So, I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with the Abrams, directly, but you get the point, right? It's a tank that it's similar-ish, right? So, initial models with the 105mm and later models with the 120mm, and also with these MTU engines. So, it uses an European engine, which is pretty interesting because then you have kind of a Abrams looking tank with an European diesel engine, so it's very interesting. It has the same tech from the armor, Chonma-ho kind of tech, so it will probably be a very similar armor to the Abrams armor, maybe a little bit worse, but on the very least it is very similar, okay? This version has the K1s, K1A1s, etc. They all have 4 crew members, with a loader. They are very mobile, very versatile, and even have hydropneumatic suspension to help with the terrain, right? So it would be like a very, very, very long distance cousin of the Abrams, with everything a modern MBT can ask for. Like I said, earlier models can have, less modernicity, less powerful gun, less powerful ammo. Later models with the 120 will be a little bit more modern, a little bit more, interesting, right? But yeah, this is the K1, a tank that it's very interesting. Of course, remember, this list is a very short one just to kind of have a line of thinking on what these tanks are, right? But yeah, the K1 would be a very interesting tank that I think it should be added to that tech, right? Another one would be the K2. Yes, the evolution of the MBT design in Korea. So it has a complete redesign of the tank itself. It is called the Black Panther, okay? And it uses the L55 120mm. So, I mean, one of the best guns out there, right? It would be basically perfect for top tier. The armor heavily upgraded over the K1. And every single system in the game, in the tank itself, would be modernized, right? It has more power with like 1,500 horsepower. The older one had 1,200 more or less, right? So more mobility. And having a lot more defense systems like missile approach systems, warning systems, laser warning systems, stuff like that. Utilizes a 3 crew member system with an autoloader with the ammo on the back of the turret, okay? And still has the hydropneumatic suspension. So You take the K1, you add extra armor, extra, power, so more mobility, and a better gun with better systems, and, a 3-crew autoloader, plus all the same systems like the hydropneumatic suspension that they had before, right? So the Black Panther will be one of the best things that we have here in this tech tree, and probably even in the game. Highly mobile, heavily armored. I mean, I don't know how much it will be close to a Leopard, but it should be, way more armor than the K1 at least, right? So we're gonna have to wait and see. And just having the L55, man, it is just one of the best guns out there, right, nowadays. So it's, yeah, very cool. The Black Panther will probably be added as well. Then we go on to talk about the North Koreans. I chose 2 tanks that are more domestically built here, because normally the North Koreans buy a lot of stuff, right? But these, we have 2 of, like, kind of domestically built tanks, okay? The first one is the Chonma-ho. The Chonma is basically a mythological horse with wings that go really fast, like a Pegasus, and this tank is named after that. It is basically a domestically built T-62 that they have, but eventually, I mean, the initial models, it's basically just a T-62, so we can have the initial models just being a T-62, but eventually, in the 2, the 3 model, and even, in the future, we can have eventually many, many upgrades, okay? So, for example, the 3rd model had ERA, a thermal sleeve for the gun, laser rangefinder, smoke grenades, a new engine, rubber skirts, stuff that, the initial T-62s didn't have, right? And later models even, we can have even better armor with applique on the turret, so even it would be kind of similar to the T-62M, right? So it's their own take on the T-62, basically. It is domestically built, very similar to that, still uses the 115mm, and it's based on that Soviet tank, okay? And then we have the Pokpung-ho. I think I'm trying to pronounce this correctly, but basically means storm lake or something like that. But yeah, this tank is a little bit more domestically built, right? So basically what they had is they have kind of in between a T-62 and a T-72, but domestically built, okay? So initially it did use the 115mm, but later apparently they did put the 125mm Soviet gun there, right? Uses stack from dismantled T-72s and even a T-80 that they got, so yeah, and basically they produced a new tank. So they get all these dismantled parts of the T-72, and apparently they got a T-80 and some other systems, and then they basically learn from that and build their own tank from the ground up. So, for example, the turret resembles a little bit the T-72, but more so even like a Type 96 or something, right? So it's a complete redesign of the turrets that they had. The hull seems like a T-62, but it is longer as well. It's a little bit different. It's said to have composite armor similar to the T-72Ms, right? And also, the fire control, for example, they had apparently an electronic fire control system added to this thing, but the initial, like, design philosophies on these were actually brought from chieftains obtained from Iran. So, remember, guys, North Korea, it's a very... South Korea is as well, but South Korea is less isolated, I would say, right? So they can actually bring stuff from other countries that are their allies, right? The North Koreans, since they are a little bit more, a lot more, away from everybody, in that regard of technology and stuff, they need to bring, stuff from here and there and try to build something that they can work with, okay? And that's why it's so interesting, this particular tank over here, the Pokpung-ho, right? Because it is a tank that it is kind of an in-between. It has a fire control system that it's based off of a British one. It has, T-72 kind of like armor, but in kind of a in-between turret of a T-72 and a hull of a T-62 kind of. Then it has in the later models ERA as well, a laser rangefinder. So yeah, it's very, very, very different from anything else. And it's kind of a Frankenstein of tanks, right? And an interesting thing is that there is a lot of versatility with this tank, because there were some, I don't know how, full-on service this thing is on that model specifically, but there are pictures of this thing actually carrying iglas on top of the turret and ATGMs, right? So I don't know how realistic that would be for actual combat, but it is cool to see no matter what, right? Imagine this tank that I would assume, I mean, T-72 like armor and stuff, it's not gonna be like top tier probably, but it is going to be like somewhat high tier, right? And then imagine like in a 10.0, 11.0 BR, something similar to that, you have a tank, an MBT, that has, you know, the armor. It has everything going for it. But then it has iglas to shoot down helicopters and aircraft, and ATGMs as well, for like outside the turret, right? So it's very, very weird and very interesting in my opinion. And that's what I think Korea, that's why I think Korea will be one of the coolest nations ever actually be added. Because yes, they will have a lot of copy paste. They will have a lot of copy paste. But when they decide to produce their own stuff, it's very interesting, and they have their own ideas because of their terrain that it's very specific to them, you know. So it's very, very cool. Okay, guys? So these are 5 tanks that for sure will be added to that tank tree. Remember, we are far off from this tech tree because they said that the Korean tech tree will be coming first for air and then later for tanks, apparently. So it is going to take a little bit of time, even for the air. It's not coming in this update, I don't think. So it will take a little bit of time, okay? So just bear that in mind, okay? So I see you guys on the next one. Make sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, and see you guys. Bye.